By Liberal MP Tim Wilson and author and columnist Peter Fitzsimons. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen. Tim, I'm going to start with you. You're an openly gay man. You famously proposed to your partner Ryan Bolger in Parliament. Has Israel Folau done anything wrong here?
Well, he might have done things on the basis of morals, he might have done something on the basis of civility, but he certainly hasn't done anything on the basis of law. And if you want a free society, and I do, a country where people are free to express their opinions and be held to account for them, all he's done is exposed himself to the nation as having a very, shall we say, narrow view about humanity, and obviously he's exposed himself as having deep religious conviction.
Pete, George Orwell once wrote, "If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they don't want to hear." But would you suggest that that has its limits?
Look, I agree with Tim Wilson. I don't think he's broken any law, but I don't think it's it exposes a narrow view. Let's say it for what it is. It's an outrageous view. I mean, what? People that are gay are going to burn in hell? I mean, seriously, there are two great traditions. There are many great traditions in Australia, but the two that I cite right now is fair go. OK, let's start with the fair go. We used to think that people that were left-handed were an aberration, that they were a problem, and we used to think that people that were gay were a problem, they were an aberration. 21st century, we understand being gay is like being left-handed, like having red hair, like having freckles. It's no big deal. So when somebody puts in the public domain, they're going to burn in hell for all eternity. We come to the second great Australian tradition, which is to say, mate, pull your bloody head in. I mean, and that's what this is about. This is not an issue of freedom of speech. He said what he wanted to say. The rest of us have said, pull your head in. That is ridiculous and potentially traumatising, most particularly to teens struggling with their sexuality, that, somebody like that says that, and those that believe in heaven and hell, come on. And so, it's, there's a freedom of speech. He said it, we've reacted to it, and so be it. And I might say with Qantas, they were strong, just as they were strong on same-sex marriage. They too have the right to say, we're putting millions of dollars into this team, we don't wish to be associated with values that represent that. So, Israel Folau, it's not a freedom of speech. Nobody's carting him away to jail. We're just saying, pull your head in, mate, be serious.
I'm sort of wondering why he's put this out there. I was having a look through his Instagram or social media profile recently, and I mean, he's not that active actually on his social media, yet he's come out with this. It's very strong. Raising something completely out of the blue. I mean, is there possibly someone else behind this, or is there someone sort of guiding him? It just seems odd that he's
up there.
Oh.
I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just following on what you said there. So, Peter, you say this is not about freedom of speech, it's about religion.
Look, I'm not a religious man. I'm quite the reverse. I'm an atheistic man. I don't believe there's anybody up there. I believe it's just us folk, and I believe we all have to look after each other. But the truth of it is, so the Bible written, somebody will correct me, but 2,000 years ago, give or take, at that time, among the people that wrote it, as I say, homosexuality was a big deal. Being left-handed was a big deal. So when you take your cues from something that was written 2,000 years ago, it's fair enough for those in the 21st century to say, look, we don't do that anymore. We're not vilifying people on the basis of their sexuality.
Yeah, Tim, I think it's been mentioned this week that Israel Folau has used a bit of brawn. He's using brawn over brains. Do you believe
that was my line?
That was your. I thought that was your line. Yeah, just to be sure. But do you think that he's known what he was doing here? Do you feel like he'd been deliberately provocative?
Well, what he was trolled by somebody on Instagram. I mean, the person who asked the question, I'm absolutely convinced, knew what the response was going to be. They are, because he is a man who's known for his faith-based perspective.
So he's trolled back.
Well, I wouldn't say he's trolled back. He's actually answered what his genuine and sincere, I suspect, view is. Now, the fact that it might be outdated with contemporary standards doesn't change the fact that he has the right to hold that opinion and the right to express it. It's just that he's going to face a certain amount of social marginalisation. But I would take a real point up with what Peter just said. The idea that sponsors would walk away from or risk walking away from sponsoring not just a sporting team, but a sporting code because of the opinions of one person is simply absurd and actually is a problem around freedom of speech. Yes, freedom of speech is about laws, but it's also about a culture where people are free to express themselves. And if you go and actually understand how human rights work and freedoms work around freedom of conscience, freedom of belief, and then how that manifests itself in terms of expression and association, there are complex liberties all in this place. But you can't start punishing whole codes, I would have thought, for the opinion of just one person, particularly when they're not hired for their opinions. That's the line about brawn versus brains. He's hired for his athletic ability and his rugby performance. It's got nothing to do with his opinions.
Okay, and the reason that Qantas, I mean, you and I, Tim, I think we had this same conversation around same-sex marriage. Oddly enough, I'm the buffy footballer, and you're the proudly gay man. We're on opposite sides again.
Let's just say that I'm more stylish.
You certainly are.
It's not that hard.
But you had that. We had this same conversation of same-sex marriage. Qantas came out very strongly in favour of same-sex marriage. Why? Because they're a carrier for the 21st century. They're inclusive. They want to carry white people, black people, gay people, straight people, tall people, big people. And so they're saying we're on favour of same-sex marriage because it's inclusive. It is quite within Qantas's rights, and it would be in their contracts to say we're aligning ourselves with the value of the wallabies. Okay, and rugby is exactly the same thing.
This is a very serious issue, because if you take that view, which is that people can't now express their religious position...
They can, but we can react.
You can react, but if you're now going to put them at a disadvantage, that is now discriminating against people based on their religious faith. Now, I don't want to go down that direction of a country just as much as I don't want a country that discriminates against people on any other basis. And if you're... basically, there's now either an unspoken or spoken rule, which is at a company that has a diversity policy, it includes diversity of everything except a diversity of opinion, particularly on religion. What you're actually going to find is you're going to marginalise and discriminate people of faith in exactly the same way you're accusing them of doing it towards others. The critical thing we need is a society of tolerance and respect for people's common humanity.
Okay. Yeah. May I finish by asking this? There will be out there, as I suspect you know, Tim, very well, I don't know you well enough to know your own journey to coming out, but we all know that there are troubled teens, okay?
Yes.
There are teenagers who are deeply troubled by their sexuality. And there are also teenagers that actually believe in heaven and hell and all of that stuff. I ask you, who's on the side of those teens right now in speaking out strongly against what Israel Folau said, me or you?
Both of us are, because we're both ridiculing his position, but I'm defending a society where they can grow up and be who they want to be, including of faith, as well of course being able to express their sexual identity rather than to suppress them and shut them down.
And when that faith marginalises a whole section of the population, I'm very happy to speak out against that part of the faith.
Why are we taking him seriously? He is selected as a rugby player for his athletic and his rugby ability, not because of opinions. I'd hate to break it to you, Peter, but there are lots of people with lots of very unpleasant ideas around society. They're going to hold them part of a critical test of growing up, and this is something that I do have experience with in a way that you don't, which is to build resilience and coping mechanisms, because Israel Folau is not going to change his opinion based on you coming out and attacking him. What you're actually doing is creating a culture where people of faith who hold those opinions think they're being marginalised.
And as we have discussed before, Tim, you're an influential, very confident, no doubt wealthy, fine man. You've always been confident of yourself. I'm not on your side. I'm on the side of the troubled teens who maybe can't defend themselves.
Fellas,
Peter,
we're going to have to leave it there. You guys
the idea that I'm not is ridiculous. I've actually fought these battles.
You guys are going to keep going all morning, and it's great. It's an idea of how hot this topic is at the moment. But Tim and Pete, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Very, very hot topic indeed. And